incoming broadcast.
Moneyball is a 2011 film that came out in September of 2011, and it turns 10 this year, which gives me a very good excuse to finally sit down and review one of my favorite sports films. That's right. Moneyball is a 2011 film that's directed by Bennett Miller, the same director that did Capote, and would later on direct Foxcatcher, and stars Brad Pitt, Jonah Hill, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Chris Pratt, Spike Jonze, surprisingly enough, and then of course Robin Wright. Big cast. This was a movie that when it came out, it was also an Oscar contender. It got nominated for 6 Oscars, and I'll talk more about that. But I am joined today by someone else that wanted to review Moneyball. I am joined today by Sergey of SkynetGen. He is someone that is a very good YouTube friend. We've collaborated a couple times on my channel, and he's challenged me a couple times as well on his channel in regards to doing certain videos. So I'm looking forward to many more collaborations in the future, but obviously because we're collaborating today, the way I'm going to structure it is I'm going to have it where he's going to be giving his positives for the movie, and then I'm going to give my positives, and then he'll give his negatives, I'll give my negatives, and then we'll wrap things up. So, all that exposition aside, take it away, Sergey.
How's it going, guys? Today I want to thank Chad for having me on the channel, where we're going to be talking about a film that has turned 10 years old, and that is Moneyball. Now, I've seen this film a couple of times. I got to rewatch it again during the sports movie challenge that I did on Letterboxd a few months ago, where I've seen 31 different sports films, and I actually wrapped up with this one. I kind of saved the best for last. In the case of Moneyball, I think this is one of the strongest written scripts for a baseball film, or any sports film in general, that I've seen in some time. Usually they follow a certain mold, and they always go in the same direction, that it was kind of refreshing to get something different. I'm a fan of the sport, so it did cater to me, and I do appreciate a good baseball film. One of my favorite baseball films of all time is Major League, and funny enough, this story in Moneyball is kind of loosely similar to it, with the focus of struggling players trying to find their way out of a slump and just rebuilding a team from scratch. But going back to Moneyball, I do think this is a really good baseball film that's up there with some of the greats. I know that a lot of people have nostalgia attached to certain things, but setting that aside, this is a very good movie that doesn't rely on that. And one of the reasons why, like I said, it's got such a strong script. We got the talents of Aaron Sorkin behind here, giving us the great dialogue, the great writing. Usually we get such a by-the-numbers underdog story that it feels like it has nothing new to tell, and it's just on autoplay. This had a refreshing and original story, which is based on true events, with really nice banter and good character chemistry. It's good to see Jonah Hill kind of break out of his usual wheelhouse, because he's always doing these raunchy comedies, and for him to turn to a dramatic role like this was really cool to see, because he's really good in it too. And in Wolf of Wall Street, a couple of years later, he'd be really great in that as well. So good to see that from him. The film also has a really nice wholesome aspect to it, with Brad Pitt and his daughter, which in any other film could have really gone any other way, but it was charming, it was sweet, I really liked it. So why is this film different from, let's say, another baseball film? Because it's easy to just scoff and just write it off. Nobody's really talking about Trouble with the Curve or whatever other one. There's so many of them being released like every so often. Well, one of the biggest differences is that this I've found to be way more engaging than any other baseball film I've seen in the last decade at least, and it has something to say other than just being about baseball. There are deeper messages about finding other ways to achieve success, not being the status quo, and staying determined against all odds, which is applicable to anybody. It's not necessarily a baseball film, and that's what makes it so great. It's accessibility. You don't need to be a fan of the sport to appreciate the film. Obviously, if you know the terminology and you follow the sport, it enhances the experience, but it's really not necessary, because you pull out so many other things out of this film aside from just the baseball aspect of it. Usually these type of films want to be flashy. This isn't the case. It's not melodramatic. It's not about a team going from last place to first place and winning the World Series. That's not even the focus of this movie at all, because it doesn't happen. It's about taking a team that doesn't receive much financial support compared to other bigger ballparks like the Yankees, the Red Sox, or the Dodgers, for example, and just turning them to a competitive team. This is a major league team. They want to at least have a chance to compete. And by taking a risk and doing something that's so out there that nobody else is doing, basically taking a chance and trusting statistics over the traditional route of scouting. So, you know, a typical ending would be for them to win the World Series. Whoop-de-doo, you know, how moving, how inspirational. I mean, we've seen it so many times that give us another ending, give us another story. And this was just a lot more refreshing, which was really great to see.
All right. Thank you very much, Sergey, for giving your positive. So, positives for Moneyball are plentiful. This is one of my favorite sports films, as I already mentioned. I love this film. I've seen it many times, and every single time I watch it, it reminds me why I love this film. It is incredibly well crafted. I mean, before I even get into the craftsmanship, though, I want to talk about the acting, because all those actors that I mentioned, they all give great performances. But the show itself obviously goes down to Jonah Hill and Brad Pitt. The chemistry between these two is so palpable. You would definitely believe that over the course of this movie, filming it, that these two became best friends, because by the end of this movie, you definitely see why they have the chemistry that they had. You know, it started off awkward in terms of like their development of the characters, but that awkwardness honestly built and built and built to by the end of the movie, you really understood their friendship, and I loved that. Character development for this movie also is really well done. I really liked how we got to know Billy Beane's character in particular. I thought he was a very interesting character. All the tics that Brad Pitt added to him also were very effective. But now I want to talk about the filmmaking itself. So the script is phenomenal. It's directed by Steve Zalen, who's one of my favorite writers. He's the same writer that did The Irishman, American Gangster, obviously Schindler's List, among many other movies. And then Aaron Sorkin. That's right, Aaron Sorkin, the same writer that did Steve Jobs, A Few Good Men, and of course, probably my favorite script of his, The Social Network. That's right, he also wrote Moneyball. These two collaborated on a script that is so well written. It's so effective, and it has 2 F words, which honestly was kind of a surprise, because I know most PG-13 movies are allowed 1.5 F words, so the fact that they were able to let 2 loose was awesome, because both usages were really effective, and one of them was very comedic, honestly. So I really liked that, but also the dialogue, the flow of things just worked really well with what they were going for. It's very knowledgeable too. You'll learn a lot watching this movie. The exposition never, and I mean never, feels like it's forced. It always feels natural, which is what it should be. It feels like we as the audience member are learning things the same way that characters are, because let's face it, this was a formula that during this time was like unheard of, really. I believe it was like the Boston Red Sox had done it like the following year. But before that, the Oakland Athletics did this formula. And it was something that worked, obviously. It worked to an extent, and it was something that was very effective. And it showed that you don't need to have a huge cap with your salary. You don't. You need to have it where it's like you actually have talent that gets on base. And I really, really liked that unique approach. It really gave a fresh spin, not only to a sports film, but obviously a drama too. Because the drama itself is obviously what's going on the field, but also off the field with Billy Beane and his family situation and everything, which, let's face it, it's something that was very much so the core of the movie, him and his relationship with his daughter, which I thought worked really, really well. I really liked it. I also loved the cinematography. It felt very natural in its approach to the lighting. The camera techniques also were really good. The camera movement, it doesn't move too much, but I thought that really made it feel more organic, because it really showed that during the scenes, the dialogue was more of the focus, per se. So I liked that. I also liked the score by Michael Dana. I thought he did a really good job. He also did the score later on, I believe, for Life of Pi. And Life of Pi, I think, might be his best score, but I do think Moneyball is still a very strong score. Especially that first track with, the first scene of the movie. Very effective. Editing also is really on point. I really liked the, momentum of the movie. It never feels like it's way too fast-paced, and it also never feels like a slow pace. I was always engaged, and it really helped with the pacing, obviously, with that first and foremost. So I like that. I really like that aspect. Excuse me. The ending also, I thought, was also quite effective. And hear me out. I found it effective in its simplicity, because, as I mentioned earlier, the core of the movie is arguably his daughter relationship, Billy Beane and his daughter's relationship. And it never felt like it fell into those cliches of like most biographical, based on true story movies where, the kids are like, you never pay attention to me, to like the parent, and that's like an absentee father and everything. It never felt like that because, let's face it, the kid was very understanding. This daughter was very understanding, and like the bond between these two was great because you were able to see this character, Billy Beane, really be someone that was working very hard with his dream, his passion, because, you know, original dream wasn't able to be fulfilled, at least not, fully. So he was able to do something else, and he was still able to do it whilst at the same time maintaining a relationship with his daughter. And she was understanding of that. I liked that. I really liked that. It's simple, but again, so oftentimes you fall into that cliche of biographical movies that make you want to roll your eyes because it's like, you're not paying attention, man. It's like, oh gosh, I've seen this so many times. And I'm not saying it's not realistic in that regards. I'm sure that does happen in real life. I get it. But I felt like, as a cliche and in most, dramas, it just sometimes feels very fresh to see a movie like Moneyball where it says, hey, kids can be understanding too. So I liked that. But yeah, there's a lot of positives. Again, script, writing, messages, cinematography. There's a lot. There's not much to hate about this movie. But all that positive said, I know I'm long-winded with the positives. All that said, I'm going to let Sergey take it away with the negatives. So take it away, Sergey.
As far as negatives go, there are some pacing issues here and there, and it could have been a shorter movie. I know some people didn't like the B-roll footage, which was fine. I understand why it could be a little annoying, but I thought it added a sense of realism that this is based on a true story to kind of remind us that this actually happened. This insane idea happened because everyone was against it except two people. The footage kind of just gives it more of a higher production value, I think, and just to remind you that this actually happened. But other than that, I don't think there's anything else wrong with it. If I were to give it a grade, I'd probably give it a 4.25 out of 5-star rating. I think that this is one of the more overlooked sports films, and more people need to check it out, simply for the writing, the acting, and just that it's not following a typical formula. That's my review of Moneyball. I want to thank Chad again for having me on the channel. I hope we could do some more collabs later on. And I'm going to pass the reins over to him for his review, and I'll see you guys next time.
All right. Thank you very much, Sergey. So in terms of my negatives, I really don't have any. There are a couple moments here and there I felt like might have been a bit slow depending on my viewing. There are some times where I do say that this is like a near masterpiece, and then there are other times where I'm like, no, it's the rating that I have it as currently. But there's nothing really I have issues with this movie. Again, it kept me engaged throughout. It's got great filmmaking. It has a lot on its mind with its themes and messages and its simplistic approach, but it worked really well. Yeah, it's a brilliant script. There's not really much else to say in terms of the negatives. So yeah, I'm very positive towards this movie. So guys, in the end, Moneyball, again, for me, it's one of my favorite sports films. It's a film that's consistently engaging. It consistently kept me entertained. It's very funny, too. I forgot to mention that. There are a lot of funny comedic lines that I really liked. Jonah Hill really got into his role. He really shed that image that he had, that super bad image for this movie. He really got into character. He gave it his all. I loved it. Him and Brad Pitt together were just, it's magical. Great, great, great stuff. So yeah, Moneyball for me, one of the best films of 2011. Just in general, one of the best films of that decade. And yeah, Moneyball for me personally, I would be giving a 4.5 out of 5-star rating, which, for those like a hot sauce rating, it's the good old Tabasco rating. So yeah, this is a great film, near perfect. So yeah, guys, that's my review for Moneyball. Spoiler free, obviously. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below on what you thought of it. And Sergey, again, thank you very much for being on my channel. Guys, if you haven't done so already, go over to his channel, hit the subscription notification bell for his channel. And again, I really do appreciate it, as well as Sergey. Hopefully we can do many more collaborations in the future. And as always, guys, let me know your thoughts on Moneyball in the comment section down below. And as always, go with the subscription, notification bell, and I'll catch you guys later.